Hi, this is Tucker with SAT Vocabulary List number 34. Please take Cornell notes, write down the word, the part of speech, the definition, as well as any examples I say or that you think of during the presentation that will help you to remember these words. And remember, if I'm talking too fast, at any point you can pause the recording so that you can catch up. The first word is jaunt, and jaunt is a noun meaning a short journey or trip, and typically this is a journey or a trip that is taken for pleasure. So it's not something you have to do, it's something that you want to do. So you might take a weekend jaunt to the beach with your family, or recently I was presenting in New York and I took a jaunt through Central Park, which was wonderful. You might also hear the adverb form of this word, which is jauntily, and this describes how something is done. So if someone walks jauntily through the park, they have kind of like a spring in their step. They seem happy, they're enjoying the walk. And so you might also hear it in that sense as well. The second word is bewilder. This is a verb and it means to confuse the perceptions or judgment of something. And that definition could be more simple. So really to bewilder is to confuse, to puzzle, or to perplex, right? And so it really does to me sound like what it means, because bewilder just sounds like you're kind of confused when you're bewildered. And when I think about this word, I think of young love and teenage relationships, and I often sympathize with teenage boys because they often seem fairly bewildered by their girlfriend's behavior or their changing emotions because it's just confusing. They're kind of puzzled. They're not sure what to make of their girlfriend's behavior. Number 3 is defer, and this is a verb, and it means to delay or to put off something to another time. And as an English teacher, I can't hear this word without thinking of Langston Hughes' famous poem, Dream Deferred, which is all about these dreams that have to be put on hold or delayed or put off to another time. And I think about, the path we all take after school. Some people defer college and they go travel for a year, or some people defer kind of employment. So they choose not to go straight from high school or straight from college into a job. They might wait a few years, defer employment until they're a little older before they get that first real 9 to 5 job. 4 is consummate, and this can actually be used as a noun or an adjective. So this definition is the adjective, and it describes anything that has or reveals really strong skills or supreme mastery in an area, whether that's playing an instrument or having a skill, like maybe someone's just an incredible writer. You might hear that they have a consummate mastery of writing. And in my class, we read The Princess Bride, and my students fall in love with the character of Inigo Montoya, which who wouldn't? And he definitely has a consummate mastery of combat, swordplay in the book. 5 is impropriety. This is a noun, and it's the state or quality of being unfit, unseemly, or inappropriate. And when I think of the word impropriety, I think of Jane Austen novels, because the women in those novels are often accused of impropriety, right? Because during the time period when Austen was writing, women were supposed to look a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way. And if you violated any of those norms, those expectations for behavior or dress, it was impropriety, right? It was offensive. You could be socially kind of ostracized or socially kind of alienated. So if you think about women's behavior, it's changed so much over the years, but it might be still considered an impropriety if you're laughing out loud at an inappropriate situation or an inappropriate time, or maybe someone is honest to the point of impropriety where, it's almost considered rude, the level of honesty that you're displaying. 6 is intuition, and a person's intuition is their like instinctive knowledge or their gut feeling about something. So your intuition, it's a noun, and a lot of times people have to really trust their intuition when they're making big life decisions. They have to trust their instincts, their gut feelings about things. And even as if you think about people who go and they travel abroad, I do a lot of traveling outside the country, and oftentimes I'm not really sure what direction to go or where I should visit next, or how to kind of find my bearings in a new place, and I just have to trust that gut instinct. I have to trust my intuition. 7 is mockery, and it's a noun, and it means ridicule. So ridicule or contempt or even an imitation of something that is like ridiculous or inappropriate. So the Mona Lisa is probably one of the most famous paintings, and here we have a recreation of it that might be considered a mockery in some sense, because it's an imitation, but it's kind of ridiculous because it's integrating today's technology. And there have been tons of imitations of the Mona Lisa done, or kind of adaptations, but one that would be considered a mockery would be one that artists and art lovers and art historians feel are kind of ridiculing, or just kind of making these kind of imitations that are fairly ridiculous. 8 is pacify, and this is a verb, and it means to bring something or someone into a peaceful state of being. And so I used a picture of a pacifier to demonstrate this word, because we use pacifiers with kids to attempt to pacify them, right? To bring them into a more peaceful state of being. Oftentimes when you're out and about, you'll see a baby fussing or crying, and a parent might pop in a pacifier to pacify them, to get them to kind of calm down, relax, and maybe enter a more peaceful state of being. 9 is ravenous, and when something is described as ravenous, it is it's voracious. It's hungry to the extreme. So if you had football conditioning all morning and you come home, you might just be ravenous. You want to eat everything you see in the refrigerator. If you think about the animal kingdom, there are definitely animals that we might associate with this word as well, because we've seen them kind of hunt and eat, and we think of them as being very ravenous or very hungry or ferociously hungry, right? And so a male lion is one that I would kind of associate with this word, right? They become ravenous and they have to go hunt, and they usually take down pretty big prey. 10 is rustic, and rustic describes anything that has characteristics or qualities of dwelling in the country. And so you might be going on a trip to, a lake and staying in a rustic cabin, a cabin that doesn't have a lot of fancy furniture. It's kind of, it looks like a country cabin. It's got a lot of wood, and maybe there's some rocking chairs for hanging out on the front porch. And so rustic is anything that has that kind of country quality about it. But because of that association, it can also be kind of used as a put down. So if you are describing something as rustic, you might be implying that it's overly simple, or it lacks in art, or it's unsophisticated. So if someone is, maybe you have like a New Yorker who's used to really high-paced life with most modern kind of things in their world, and then they go to this country cabin, you might hear them say, wow, that's so rustic, right? And it's not a compliment. They're saying, gosh, there's like not that much here. It's really simple. It's unsophisticated. 11 is stringent, and something described as stringent is rigid or binding or very severe. So rules in a classroom can be really stringent, or contracts that people sign can be really stringent, really binding and severe, particularly if you were to violate that contract. 12th word is tolerance, and you might hear the word tolerance, which is a noun form, or tolerant might be something you hear more often. But tolerance is the forbearance in judging of acts or opinions of others. So broken down in maybe to simpler terms, tolerance is when a person basically is open-minded about other points of view, other belief systems, other religious views. So if you tend to be fair and open-minded and objective and allow other people to have and share different points of view and different perspectives and beliefs, then you are demonstrating tolerance, right? You're not pushing your ideas on someone else. And oftentimes when we get to college, we're put in classes with really diverse groups of people, and we're exposed to lots of different ideas. And so if you're able to practice tolerance, you can learn from lots of different people and their ideas. If you're not a tolerant person, that can be a really challenging environment for you. 13 is vernacular, and vernacular can be used as either a noun or an adjective. So the noun form is just the language of one's country. So it's your native speech and language, but it can also be used as a describing word. So keep an eye out for how it's being used. But if you think about it, like writers, they use their vernacular language when they're writing. Or if you're traveling and you want to learn the vernacular of the language where you're going to be traveling, you might pick up one of those translation books. It has your language translated into the language of the vernacular where you're going to be if you're trying to kind of speak in that language which isn't your native language. 14 is euphoria, and it's a noun. It's a strong feeling of happiness, of confidence, well-being, contentment, and euphoria is like the highs of the highs when you think about your emotional kind of roller coaster that we all live on, right? If you just feel like you're at the top of your game, life is going really well, you might experience euphoria. And oftentimes you might hear this word used when people talk about drugs, right? Like a drug-induced euphoria. Like people feel so happy and content on certain drugs, which is like the appeal of those particular drugs. But you can also have moments where you feel euphoria just in your day-to-day life, where you just feel really happy and confident and content. I know lots of teenagers, they love certain bands, right? Maybe you love Taylor Swift, or you love One Direction, or you think Ed Sheeran is amazing, which I totally agree that he is. Then you might feel euphoria if you're at a concert. You're surrounded by your friends, you're listening to music by a musician that you absolutely love. You might hit this kind of state of just feeling totally happy and totally content. And the last word is modicum, and it's a noun, and it means a moderate or small amount of something. And I just underlined MOD in modicum and MOD in moderate to try to help you make an association between these two words. But oftentimes when I think of modicum having kind of a small amount of something, I think of it in terms of kind of a negative, like someone with a modicum of common sense. Like they have a little bit, but not that much of just common sense. And so interacting with someone like that can maybe be a little frustrating. I also think about this word when I'm, not just when I'm thinking about people who are lacking something or don't have enough of something, but I think about it with myself because I often feel like I'm attempting to maintain some modicum of calm or modicum of patience when I'm dealing with my own children because I just don't have a lot of patience to begin with, so it's easily tested.